is that we all get it. Don't give in to the pain, just keep living, cause
got dreams I'm striving for. So I'm gonna live higher. I'm gonna live higher. I got dreams, got dreams I'm striving.
What's up, guys? It's Toby Rosario, and in today's video, I wanted to do a video to talk about what do you do when you can't find a buyer, right? You're unable to sell that deal. Okay, so before I do, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I'll have it somewhere in the bottom here. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification, and that way you get notified whenever I post a new video. Also, don't forget to give this video a like. It does help with the algorithm to share this more to a lot more people. So what happens when you can't find a buyer, right? You feel like you have a deal, but the buyers aren't biting. Well, number one, you need to understand, if you have a deal, you're gonna find a buyer, right? So you first need to understand that you need to question yourself and ask yourself, do you really have a buyer, right? Do you have a buyer? Do you have a deal, right? Is this an actual deal? Well, how do you know that, right? Well, one thing you can do is you can have your buyers tell you, where do I need to be at, right? Where do I need to be at in order for this to be considered a deal for you, right? So you can survey your buyers, ask a couple of your buyers, what numbers do they need to be at in order for this to be considered a deal, right? So you can go that route, let them tell you, right? And so that's one route. The other route you can go is, I don't like to do this anymore. I used to do this in the past. I would go back to the seller and renegotiate the price, right? So if the buyer tells you I need to be at 50,000, you have it for 53 or whatever that number is. You can go back and say, tell the seller, I got good news and I got bad news. The good news is we've already closed. The bad news is, it turned out to be a lot more rehab than we thought. Can you meet me halfway? It's going to cost 10,000 to fix it. I don't expect you to cover the whole 10,000, but can you meet me halfway and drop it down 5,000, right? So in that case, if you had you had it for 53, and the buyer needed to be at 50, you would try to negotiate with the seller, try to get it down to 45 or 47, 48, whatever makes sense. But I normally don't like to do that anymore, and the reason is because I like to keep my word, right? If I agree on a price with a seller, I'm very confident that I'm going to sell that price. Very confident that I am going to that it's a deal, right? And I'm going to sell that property. So I don't like to renegotiate with the seller, unless obviously there's some liens that turned out to be more than what the purchase price is, or whatever the case is, or something like that. I like to keep my word, and stick to the number that we agreed on, right? That's just my personal preference. I used to do that in the past, but I no longer do that. I will go back and try to renegotiate, but I don't recommend doing that. But if you have to, you could do that. Another way what you can do is just show more buyers the property. A lot of times what you're going to find is, sometimes it's not so much if it's a deal, or let me rephrase that. It's not so much what the property is worth. Sometimes it can really come down to what a buyer is willing to pay. What I mean by that, a new investor who's relatively new will be willing to pay more than someone who is seasoned, right? Someone who knows their numbers and is very strict with their criteria. So someone who's relatively new will be willing to pay a little bit more than say a traditional seasoned investor. And you can get those buyers either from your sphere of influence, or you can get them from MLS, where you will list it with a realtor, because those people are relatively new. They're not seasoned investors. So that's a good way to to try to find new buyers that way, not so much seasoned investors, because they're very strict with their criteria. So a new investor, they're just looking to get in the game, right? They're looking to start flipping properties. They watch HGTV, they get excited, and they think they're gonna have the same success. So they're willing to pay a little bit more. That's number two. Number three, you can ask for an extension with the seller, right? Ask for an extension to get the contract extended 15 more days, 30 more days. That way it gives you more time to show more people the property, right? To have more people bid on the property, because sometimes you might have a handful of buyers, they might not be interested. But if you show enough people the property, if you show enough people the property, you're going to be able to sell it if you have enough people go through the house, right? So that's another way. So One way is make sure you have a deal, right? Make sure you can confirm with your buyers where they need to be at in order for to make this work. Again, I don't recommend this, but if you had to, go back and renegotiate it for a couple of grand less. That way you can make a little bit of money on that deal and get that deal done for the seller. And then third, you can also get an extension to try to show more eyeballs to the property. And try to get newbie investors who are relatively new. They're not seasoned. They're willing to pay a little bit more, or someone who's looking to move in the property. Those are great buyers because they'll pay a lot more than a seasoned investor. They're not looking to flip. They're looking to live in the property, so they'll pay, meaning these are cash buyers as well. So they're willing to pay a little bit more than the average investor, because the average investor is looking for a profit margin. Someone who's looking to live in the property, if they're in love with that property, they'll pay more because their end goal is not to flip the property. They're not looking for a margin. They're looking for a place to stay. So those are some tips that I have. Let me know in the comments if you have any other tips if you're not able to sell the deal. So you also try to get an extension as well. Extend that contract so you can show more people your property also. And also, again, try to network with local investors, because their buyers might be interested. Your buyers might not be interested in that particular property, but they might have a bigger buyers list than you, and you will be able to see if they can work something out with their buyers list, because their buyers might be looking, one of their buyers might be looking to buy in that particular area, that particular zip code, that particular condition. They might be looking, again, to buy it and they might be willing to pay a little bit more than your investors on your list. So that's it. That's my time. My name's Toby Rosario. Peace.